All right. We are going to call to order this, well, sort of regular meeting of Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. We will do our call to order and our roll call first.
Student Trustee Shepard.
We are going to
Here.
call to order
Student Trustee Deodar is absent tonight. Trustee Khan.
Here.
Trustee Boyd.
Here.
Vice President Hopwood.
Here.
President Davidson.
Here.
And Superintendent Dr. Wells. Dr. Evans, excuse me.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. Dr. Evans. What a way to start.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay. Trustee Shepard, would you like to read part of the mission and vision statement or the meeting norms, or choose one, or take it all on, whatever you feel up to?
I can do whatever.
You do it all?
Sure, okay.
All right.
Okay. The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student. Meeting norms. Maintain a focus on what is best for our students, ensure a safe environment for all views to be expressed, treating each other, staff, and the public respectfully. Endeavor to find common solutions to issues through collaboration without sacrificing one's belief in what is best for students. Make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind while others are allowed to express their own points of view, even if one disagrees.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join if you would like. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible. All right. There was no action taken in closed session, so we will move on to the approval of the agenda or questions on the agenda. You have a question, Vice President Hopwood?
I have just something I wanted to correct. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it now. Oh, no, it is, okay. Item 11B, the Board of Education midterm appointment, there is a typo in the agenda packet, misspelling or misstating one of our applicants' names. So it was Jason Wittenberg, who is here, and it was incorrectly written as John Wittenberg. So that's been mentioned and will be corrected. Thanks.
Okay. We will now take a motion to approve the agenda or any further questions.
Move that we approve the agenda.
With the amendment of the name.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so our agenda passes, and we are going to move on. Do you have any student board member reports? Okay. I think we had discussed maybe taking that out, but we left it in, just in case. Welcome to the board. We are so happy to have you here, and thanks for jumping right in. We will now move on to public comment for matters not on the agenda. So if you are commenting on something that is not on the agenda, please come on up to the podium or raise your hand in our virtual audience.
Okay, good evening. My name is Jacob Clark, and I have 2 children at the high school, and I'm a former board member myself. I'm here tonight to advocate once again for our district to name something in honor of Dr. Frank Wells. I recently reached out to a few people inquiring about setting up a committee to discuss naming something in our district after him. They all responded to my email, and I'd like to thank them for responding so quickly. Frank was an exceptional friend, educator, and leader. I know this is an extremely busy time of the year, but I'm here to make sure we don't forget about Dr. Wells. I am respectfully requesting that we please set up a committee as soon as possible to ensure that we do all we can to honor such a deserving man. I wish you all a wonderful upcoming school year and have a good evening.
Thank you for your comment. All right, we have one in our virtual audience. Go ahead.
Hi there. I'm Emily Sarowitz. I have 4 children in the district, and I've been teaching in the district since 2007. I worked under 4 superintendents. I'm also really proud and thankful to be part of the Albany Teachers Association. Oh, sorry about my dog. I was really surprised this morning when I heard that for the first time in anyone's memory, ATA wouldn't be involved in the selection process of our new leader. ATA has always had a place at the table in selecting a superintendent. I think we need one, and we're valued partners. We're partners with the district and the board. We're good partners. We're solid partners. We're reliable partners. I was not alone in being surprised to hear we were going to be shut out of the process, and I'd like this to be changed. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everybody that tomorrow night the board has a workshop to discuss this process, so we really encourage everybody to attend that. All right, seeing no further public comment, we are going to move on to our approval of the consent calendar or any questions or items that we need to discuss further.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, consent calendar has passed unanimously, and we can move on to our first staff report, which is California School Dashboard Local Indicator 1.
Good evening, Board Trustees, Superintendent Evans, District Leadership Team, Albany educators, and community. Welcome back to the 24-25 school year. I hope you had a relaxing and rejuvenating summer, and a special welcome to our new student board member. It's so wonderful to see you here in this setting. I know I've seen you many times at the ACC. Okay, with that being said, the purpose of this item is to present Local Indicator 1 data that just became available several weeks ago. As you recall, at the June 18th meeting, I gave a comprehensive presentation about all of the local indicator data that was available and that was already uploaded to our dashboard. Unfortunately, at that time, this data was not available, and this is reported to us by the state before we upload it back on the dashboard. And as required by the state, I am presenting this new data, which is actually old because it's from the 22-23 school year at the first board meeting as required by the state. And just as a quick reminder to all of us, local indicators are data metrics that have been determined by the state as a measure to measure our progress towards improved outcomes for students. And we have 5 local indicators, and this indicator 1 has 3 data points. And the 3 data points are appropriately assigned teachers, sufficiency of instructional materials, as well as facilities repairs. And I reported in June on material sufficiency as well as facilities repairs as being in 100% compliance. And we should be all set and on target to receive a MET from the state on all of the indicators, including this one. But here it is, the appropriately assigned teachers data from the 22-23 school year, which is the first year we came back from the COVID environment. And as you know, since then, we have really been experiencing teacher shortage throughout the state. But as always, Albany fares better than other districts as well as the state. So just to review quickly, in 22-23, we had total of 179.5 total FTEs, which means full-time equivalent teachers working with us in that school year. And this means teachers who have teacher credentials who are working some form of credential. And 90.5% of those teachers had what is called a clear credential. And a clear credential are teachers who have completed all of their credential coursework and have received a credential from the state. We had 1.3% that were classified as out of field. What this means is these teachers hold a full credential in a subject matter, but they are currently teaching out of that subject field with an emergency credential. Then we had 1.7% of teachers considered interns. And intern credentials are given to teachers who are enrolled in a credential program and are in the midst of pursuing coursework to complete their credential. And then we had 4.8% who were classified as ineffective. And ineffective are teachers who are enrolled in the credential program, but yet have not engaged in enough coursework to be considered an intern. All these categories. And we had 1.8% considered incomplete. And this category is given to teachers for whom the district has provided information to the state about their credential, but for some reason, CTE and CDE are unable to verify that information. And we had 0% classified as unknown. And unknown, just for our knowledge, is if the district does not submit sufficient information to the state, but we didn't have any categorized as that. And NA are teachers who can actually teach without any authorization of a credential, and we had 0 in that category. So that concludes Local 1 indicator.
All right, are there any questions or comments on this additional piece of data? No, none from the board. Any public comment on this data? All right, thank you, Dr. Shin. That was wonderful. I always like to compare our district to the county and the state. Looks good. Okay, we are going to move on to our review and discussion item of the Board of Education self-evaluation results for the 23-24 school year. So this is something that we do annually, where the board looks at sort of our processes, our progress, how we're focusing on different items, and we go back and kind of reflect on it, think about it. Sorry, I think I opened a different one. Okay. Anyways, we're going to share the results up here so that we can kind of see, each of us does this, and then Julie put together a table so that we can kind of look at, you know, if there's any common trends in this or areas that we see as developing where we really all want to put some focus as we move into this next year. So if anybody had any comments on this. I think just to confirm, so Julie, it's basically questions at the top, and then each board member's response is down below. And what you'll see is at the bottom of this, there's a green row. It's kind of shaded, and that is from our board trustee who has since resigned from the board. So we're showing the current board members in white, and that's in there because that was submitted. One thing that I am noticing is, you know, there is some developing on a couple of the questions on here. So if anybody had any insight on that or had questions about that, any of those?
I just had an observation or something I wanted to comment on, which is that Dr. Wells unexpectedly passed away in March, and we were sent this in May. And so it was a sort of transition time for us, and we had priorities other than reflecting too much on board governance. And I think we were all very honest in our evaluation, that we all recognize that there's room for improvement. And we realize, I think we know what it is we need to do to be more effective. And I think there's always room for improvement. But I do think that we are a committed, engaged group of people who want the best for the students in our district. And so anything that's seen here as developing, I don't think people should interpret that as a weakness. It's just that we were being very reflective, so.
For myself as a board member, whenever I go through this, I try to think about it, how we go about our superintendent evaluation. And so really giving some areas that we can, I think, oh, hey, I remember we had this one experience or this one issue. We handled it this way, thought after we could have done this or that. So I would like put something like developing for that, just because it still gives us some area to work on it. So I think, we definitely have a couple, I would say here, like the board works with the superintendent to gain input from the community using forums, survey instruments, and other vehicles following agreed upon procedures. I think communication has always been something that we're looking at. And I'm sorry, Julia, I jumped all the way down to standard 3, just to keep that on. And I think it's always a challenge for us to feel like we're getting input from enough of the community, but we're always really trying to be thoughtful of ways that we can do that and new ways and taking input on that. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that one. I'm seeing here one line where it says, yeah, just like having different methods for getting the feedback from the community. So maybe it's school site councils. Yeah, anyone else have anything?
Oh, sorry. Well, so certainly on the topic of soliciting opinions and feedback and suggestions from members of the community, different members of the community, that is something that we've discussed, the importance of figuring out ways, brainstorming how to be more effective in that way. We've made certain strides on that, during the last few years, as far as certainly increased communication and I think increased transparency as well, though it's always a challenge, always something we can be better at. Making information available in multiple languages, and so I definitely recognize that as an area for growth, and would certainly say to the community that is something that we are actively working on and discussing and recognize we should be improving on. Certain subjects as well, I think this was in Standard 2, where it talks about the board retreat, or having a retreat, and also policies. I was just kind of looking at, places where things sort of fall below the, at least 3 effective. That was the metric that my shorthand. And, I think that we talked as well about kind of the lack of a formal retreat. And I think that, we do try to spend time building these relationships and working with our council to understand what the role is of the board and all of those sort of things, especially when we get new members. But I do think that, it would be great to spend time on trying to build those relationships, perhaps especially at the point of new board members, a new superintendent, a new CBO. I think that would be a really great time to have, a focused retreat. There'll be a lot of change. And then also on board policies, we made, with the great assistance and help and direction from the district office, we made some real strides with regard to our policies and updating our policies, and it's something that we are aware, kind of slipped a bit, but I'm happy that we, kind of leveled things up. It was something that we understood was really important, and we devoted a great deal of energy to. Again, not nearly as great as the district office. Very much appreciate those efforts. Those were just some things that I noticed.
I think I definitely second everything that Trustee Boyd said, but also I think for me what stood out was E. Wait, no, I think you're on a different one. On Standard 3, question E is more so about advocating for the district's interests with legislators and other elected public officials. I feel like while we have some relationships with city council, it can definitely be developed much more, but beyond that, we do need to look at other avenues as well, especially when I feel like much larger districts are able to represent their needs to their assembly members, senators, and so forth, and oftentimes even bring money into the district. And those are things that I think avenues that we need to look into, especially being a small district and having very limited financial resources, especially like you can only pass so many bonds, so many measures before, you know, there's nothing more to work with. And I think reaching out to our legislators and having those difficult conversations of the like improvements that we need in our school sites, and also what the assembly members and senators can do to bring that money to us, instead of, you know, just us struggling on our own. Even just working with, the word is slipping me, our county supervisors, like even those individuals are folks we can tap into. They are all, you know, they have pockets of money that the state designates for them to distribute within their counties that they're responsible for, and those are avenues that I think we need to like look into a little bit more. I know I'm a little bit more familiar with that route because of my profession, but I'm happy to, you know, have those conversations and see how we can push some of those avenues a little bit more. Even if it's small steps at a time, I think it's well worth, you know, getting ourselves out there.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that was literally the other thing that I meant to say, and I appreciate you bringing it up because you are super knowledgeable about these things. Every time I come to that question in the board evaluation, I always honestly kind of think, I don't do that. Like, I mean, you know, that's really, and I didn't, you know, I didn't pretend that I was skilled in that when I, you know, kind of threw my hat into the ring. It's not something that I have any experience or background with at all, but it is something that I recognize is really important. And I think that if we do want to continue to evaluate the board in that way, I think it would be really great to, like, I don't, you know, maybe you can like teach us a workshop, maybe we can bring some, I'm not sure what the right way would be, but I think it's clearly something that we think is important, and all the points you just raised, it is important and could really have a strong benefit for the district. But so thank you for bringing it up, and I think it'd be great for us to make strides in that way.
And if I can add on that, I think one of the easier ways that I've found to engage in that is CSBA does host every year a virtual legislative visit where we get to meet with our local elected officials and just talk to them about some of the issues impacting our schools. I've been able to participate in it as a board member for the last 2 years, and I think even if it's just, I know those timings are often very chaotic and the way that they schedule them, but it's still something that I think we would all benefit from, like if we're able to participate just as a starting point before really deep diving into any of this, because it is new territory for a smaller district like ours. So, but just, yeah. I'm happy to do any workshops if people are interested. I do them often at work, so I'm fine.
In all your free time.
Yes.
Well, I think it, you know, during the COVID like re-entry period and everything, I know that Jackie and Ann worked really hard on getting us funding from different sources and making sure we were checking boxes on things, and I was always really impressed that they were out there and seeking that, but it's an added role on district staff who are already maxed out. So I think the more that the board can become at least knowledgeable and establish some metrics for us to assess ourselves on for next time would be really smart. You know, we can take some baby steps, but I think if like each person said, okay, I'm gonna commit to this, it would be really, really helpful. And then maybe like, hey, I'm gonna partner with one cabinet member and we'll really work on it. So it could be, hey, are there training programs that we could offer? Is there professional development we could bring in? Is there funding for facilities? Something like that. I have one more to jump down on, but if anyone else wants to go ahead. No? Okay. I was just on standard for question C, I think it's B and C, where we're talking about the board keeps the community informed about the financial needs of the district, seeks cost savings and operational efficiencies, and invites community input. I feel like we put a lot of effort into this year with the Measure G campaign. I would love to hear from more of the community about how much of that information they actually like received and what they know, because I do feel that we put out a robust amount, and Jackie had the budget corner, so it was kind of in every board meeting. And I would love to hear what people think, you know, their knowledge of the district's budget situation is and the things that we've done and how we came to those conclusions. And then another area is the board monitors a facilities plan that meets district, student, and staff health and safety regulations and guidelines. This was the first time that we could say, I could say, hey, we actually have this. It exists. Looking at neighboring districts who are shutting down school sites due to facilities needs, I think this is like a common problem. This is not isolated to Albany. And the board is at least very aware of the needs and taking steps to try and come up with solutions so that we can address these. We're not just like, okay, we know that's a problem, just leave it there. Yeah. Any other? You're good? Okay. The last thing I'm going to go to is Standard 5, Ethical Leadership, Question C. This was it was really challenging to be doing this, kind of like in the midst of some of the things that were going on our board. And I think I've seen this one come up so many times in my time watching board meetings and being on the board, and it's that board members exercise their authority only as a board of the whole and recognize that no individual board member has authority to take individual action on behalf of the board. It's really critical for us to remember, and I feel like many of us have been doing a really good job on it, but like we've had some instances where that's gone awry, and it's like created more work for our district leadership and executive cabinet. Things have been asked for that the entire board didn't feel were necessary and didn't feel it were the direction we should be going, and a board majority had voted, and still an individual drove it in a different direction. And I think that's something that I would like us to continue working on, like how we as a board make sure we're agreeing to it, we cooperate, we just continue to share that understanding that that's kind of like a core one, and we get that every year at our training from our legal advisors, that we can't just start demanding, and that remind everyone, all of our board communications to our executive cabinet, we channel them through the superintendent. He is our one employee that we hire and we check in with, and then he says, okay, you can contact these other people. But as a board member, we're not just directing staff or saying, I need this or I need that. We have to have it in here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something, just incorporating things like that into, you know, some sort of an onboarding or retreat process, I think would be extremely helpful, because it's good to have it in one setting, but sometimes you just need to have that soft, gentle reminder multiple times throughout, because our terms are, you know, 4 years long. It's sometimes it's easy to get comfortable and forget things, and it's good to always hold ourselves accountable to the same standard that we expect to hold other people accountable within the district. So it's the bare minimum I think we could all do. So.
And by the same token, I think it would be useful to remind the community sometimes of what the procedures are in terms of the sort of chain of command. So, yeah, just in that same vein.
And of how little time we as a board actually have to discuss anything. The majority of our discussions are what you see here. We can have no discussions outside of here unless it's with one other person, and our closed sessions are even like very tightly monitored and regulated what we can discuss in there or hear in there. Most of the time we're just hearing, you know, things in the district that are confidential that we need to know about. And so that's a big challenge, and I think that's where a retreat could be so helpful, once, maybe twice during the year, just to like come together and just reconnect, make sure that we're moving the district in the direction that the entire board feels is really where we want to go. All right. Anyone else? Mackenzie, do you have any feedback for us? Okay, we'll now take public comment on the board's self-evaluation results. So if you have comment in person, please come up to the podium. If you have public comment in our virtual audience, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, we are going to adjourn this item, and we are going to move on to item 11A, which is under review and action. This is discussing our board governance handbook and our district committees. And I'm just going to take a second and pull appropriate things up here. Okay, so in Albany Unified School District, we've historically had a number of committees, and in my time on the board, we've added committees. And then we've maintained the committees that we had, and we have a couple committees that haven't met but would be helpful. So there's like a whole thing of it. This is a list of our committees. We have the Board Policy Committee, the Budget Advisory Committee, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, the District English Learners Advisory Committee, Environmental Action Plan Committee, Special Education Advisory Committee, Student Achievement Committee, and the Wellness Committee. And these committees are mostly board established, other than the District English Learners Advisory Committee, or DLAC. That's required by law. So our district has to keep that. And the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, we have bonds. That's how we built our schools. We need that committee. Other than that, I want to propose that we take a little bit of time as a board, and maybe when our new board members come on, maybe with our new superintendent, just because we have so many changes going on right now, that we pause on our committees meeting until January 2025, and then we come back together, or the new board comes back together and reassesses. The reason behind this is, as stated here, these committees facilitate stakeholder engagement and have specific compositions, purposes, and measurable outcomes. And I keep using the word tangible outcomes. So some of these committees have delivered their deliverables and are now just giving updates. And I think it would be, this is my opinion on it, I think it would be helpful to have those updates in our public board meetings so that people could hear, okay, hey, you know, we have the environmental action plan. Here are the things that we've done in that because we presented it to the public. We stated what we would be doing. Our budget advisory committee, you know, was talking a lot about budget cuts and those things. Huh? Yeah, like for, exactly. We've heard that some of our other committees maybe need like the makeup or the requirements that were set adjusted so that they can be more effective. There's different ways that different districts like meet some of these goals and do things. And so I think it would just be helpful to look at it. And also maybe in that we could, you know, have a wider network of people. Maybe some of these issues are things that our site councils could take up and give those a little more depth and value, things like that. So that was sort of the thought behind this one, just as we're doing all of these other things as well. And of course, this is going to come up for a vote, so it's up to us. And the last thing is that the board would like to bring the governance handbook back to the new board in the beginning of 2025 as well, to give new board members a chance to review the current handbook and then do a workshop, kind of like a retreat in January 2025 or early 2025. So, yeah.
So the only comment I have is, well, I almost completely agree with you. There are two committees that I would like us to keep, aside from the DLAC and the bond committee, and whoever serves on those committees can feel free to agree or disagree, but I do think we should continue the Special Education Advisory Committee meetings and the Student Achievement Committees. I think based on just some of the data that we've seen on where the areas where students need the most support, I think we have students that fall in both of those committee areas that are being served, that I think we should still continue to have those meetings and conversations and figure out some of the plannings. And I mean, serving on the special education committee, I know that there were things that we were planning at the end of last year that we were looking forward to continuing this year. And so just, you know, based on that, I do think that there would be benefit in continuing those committees. It's only, you know, what, 5 months or so that we would be meeting, but I do think it would be valuable, particularly for those two. I didn't serve on the Student Achievement Committee, so if anybody else served on the Student Achievement Committee, if you feel otherwise, feel free to disagree, but those are just my immediate thoughts on this.
I would say that I think it's going to be tricky to say yes to this one, no to that one. I mean, Melissa and I both serve on the Student Achievement Committee. We've had a really robust, really well-attended couple of years. I would actually say it would be fine to pause it for a few months, simply because I think we have so much material and so much input from stakeholders, thanks to Dr. Shin. I think we could almost use what we've learned to develop a future plan, and I'd be really happy to defer to Dr. Shin on that. But I think if we're going to be, I'm not disagreeing with your opinion about the Special Education Advisory Committee, but I think otherwise, because they all have value, but I think we're just simply saying pause it so that we can bring a new board on and really be starting together.
Well, and I
in
think
January.
it's also to give our district leadership and team some time to give us the feedback that we would need to actually make an educated decision on it, and those committees to give the feedback as well. I'm not saying like, okay, we're just going to cut committees, but I think like we need a period of time here to assess what each committee is doing. You know, we kind of get the snippet updates in our board reports, but I was really hoping that we could, you know, have a broader discussion around this. And when the conversation kind of came up of like, hey, we have this one committee and we really need to change the makeup because we can't, you know, meet our quorum due to these regulations, it was like, oh, well, if that's going on here, it's also going on here. And there just wasn't enough time between when we were hearing that and one of these meetings to actually like make an educated decision. So instead of that, I think we would be using this time to figure those out and like do an in-depth look at each committee and what it brings. And then also, you know, if the board was like, hey, we actually feel like we need a committee that's not the environmental action plan, but is like the facilities master plan monitoring committee instead with an eye on environmental action, like maybe that's what we readjust to or something. But the board, you know, needs information.
So can we schedule a workshop or something to actually have a conversation with the relevant district staff to make that determination, as you were just describing? Because it's saying pause it until January, but we need to have some discussion before that.
Go ahead. I was going to recommend that there needs to be some type of meeting where we actually could sit down and talk about these, because we are looking at configurations, outcomes for each one of these committees, and that's going to take some time. And just maybe a small committee or, you know, a board or just 2 board members, we can meet to kind of do some of the legwork so that we can bring that back to the board.
I was actually just, my comment is along the lines of the last few things that were said. I'm fine with pausing all of the committees for the reasons suggested. I'm wondering just about I don't know that it's one meeting exactly, but whatever the process is going to be to sort of make this assessment, it kind of feels to me like there's value in having the committees meet the people who want to say, what do you think this committee should be? Like, you know, so we served on student achievement, we served on special education, like the people I would want to chime in on what they think the Student Achievement Committee should be doing are Dr. Shin and the people who were members of the committee. So I'm wondering, I'm guessing there's a formal sort of, if we have these committees constituted, they have to do these things. And so we're trying to get out of that like forced sort of structure perhaps of, you know, we're going to have these things meet once a month or whatever it is, but I do think it would be helpful to have some form of structure where, you know, the committees maybe meet once over the next few months for the sole purpose of what do you think this committee should look like type of thing, and then maybe a spokesperson or whoever wants to do it from those committees could attend this workshop meeting thing we're talking about, where we take that information and kind of figure out what to do with it, or something like that.
I guess my vision was kind of like that the board members who served on each committee, and then the staff member who leads that committee would kind of put their heads together and then reach out as needed
Got it.
onto that committee and get that information, and then in January, come back at, I would say at a regularly scheduled board meeting or a board workshop and present. Each committee would kind of present, and then we would say, okay, yeah, this meets our board goal, which we just talked about was our metrics for how we assess ourselves. Okay, this is really helping the district on this goal or this board goal or the superintendent, and the board decided we need this to meet a superintendent goal. And so that we're really looking at it in that comprehensive way, but I'm not saying, okay, between now and January, don't talk about it, don't do anything. More like, let's pause with the officialness of them and
Like
having that, and let's take some time to really look at and talk about as a board. And if we wanted to say, hey, in September and October, let's have an agenda item, just a quick discussion about this, or if we wanted to say, hey, we can wait till November, but it was also not to rush our district staff into being like, get us this, now we need to make decisions before we make appointments onto the committees. Yeah.
I actually really like that idea, where maybe the board member that was on that committee meets with staff and myself and really look at the committees and examine what we need in terms of moving forward. I think that's a great idea.
When
that
there's
we
two
actually-
of us on each committee.
Or two, yeah.
I think that that's a great idea. I will speak personally as a member of the Special Education Committee. I absolutely do not want to be a stronger voice of setting what that committee is supposed to do than the members of the committee from our community. So I think from a streamlining standpoint, or, I'm happy to be a part of the group that discusses where the Special Education Committee would like to, how we would like to show up in future, but I very much want to make it available to members of the community if they would like to participate. And I also very much don't want to say, any member of the cabinet, you need to move quickly to do, none of this is to make any more work or to make any sort of rushed work. I just want to make sure that those who would like a voice as to the direction of these committees, especially with something on that topic in particular, but I'm sure it applies to all committees, would be able to do that.
One of the issues that we had was getting a quorum in some of the meetings. That made it really hard to even conduct the meeting because we didn't have the quorum. So your suggestion would be to invite anybody who wants to participate from that committee, along with the board members that's representing that committee, to have this discussion.
So I was actually going to say basically the same thing that Trustee Boyd said, except that I think in whatever discussion process, it should not just include parents, but it should also include the student members of those committees as well. Obviously, whoever has capacity and is available to do so, but I just don't want it to be limited just to district staff and just to the board, because other members of the committee offer great insight, and it's something that we should consider, just because we might have a different view of what the goal should be for a committee compared to a parent or a student, or so on and so forth. So I just I think we should make it available to everyone.
I'm just going to give a reminder here that some of our committees are board-appointed committees. Those are meeting a board directive. The board said, we're establishing this committee because we know there's this issue and it must meet these things. The Special Education Advisory Committee is not one of those committees. So it falls, there's two categories, so we can break it down under that as well and have those different things, but there is a little bit of a line here where, the board really does, we as a board need to look at it and say, which of these are still necessary to meeting one of our goals? Because in some ways, I think just having committees is we're just having committees. But we need to have committees that are moving something forward and bringing it forward. We need board policy, right? Our board policy committee, I'm just going to say it, I was on it for a while, and we worked on one policy for over a year, and we still haven't seen that in front of the board. that's not an effective use of time. And there's other examples from other districts, so I just think it's time to reflect on it, but like not shut out the community voice. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying like, I think we have to balance here when we start looking at them, and then when we say, hey, yes, these are the committees that we're really like, we feel strong, like, yeah, okay, we feel really strongly that we need this special ed advisory committee. We know why it was developed, we know when it was developed, and then we hear from the community.
I'm comfortable with that. I think based off of which ones were required and or we have specific for district objective versus some that were developed over time, I think we can have kind of a, figure out what works best on each one.
We could adjust the timeline on this too, or we could say, I mean, you guys, we can say anything. I'm not trying to like roll over people and say, this is it. I'm just trying to give you my like backup reason, but we can adjust this for sure.
So what would be the direction of the board for me?
I don't think we know what that is yet. So
2 minutes.
so I'm not running to be on the board again. So the committees will not meet anymore during the time that I'm on the board. This isn't about me as an individual, but I'm just saying, I feel like I'm hearing a lot of things. It's like some of the committees don't work in an efficient way. Some of the committees, like, we want to figure out who the new board members are going to be. We need to figure out if these committees should exist or not. And like all those things, each individual committee, those are all different concerns. And I'm just not sure that the goal of figuring out how each committee should work is served by not doing, and I know we're not saying don't do anything, but the form of what we want to do over the next few months to figure out what we're doing with the committees, it's just not like making sense to me. Like I just don't, if we want to have an agenda item where we agendize people from the committee being able to come in and say, this is what I think about whether the board policy committee should exist or not, and then at the end of that discussion, we vote on whether the board policy committee should exist or not. I understand that as a process. Like, I just don't understand what we're trying to do exactly to figure out how we get there, and I don't want to get there without having the possibility for community input. I understand the concept of quorum. I'm an attorney, so like I don't know whether we're saying there aren't enough people at certain meetings or there aren't enough people filling certain positions at those meetings, and if that's the case, that's a committee by committee issue. That's not an issue for all committees. So I feel like a whole bunch of things are being meshed together, and I can't tell what problem we're trying to solve exactly, and it all just kind of feels like, so let's just not do anything.
No.
At least that involves the community for the next 4 months.
Let's give time. Maybe it should say, not pause them, but like put them into a reassessment period where we are an evaluation period between now and January or February. But if we don't get our new board members until maybe tomorrow and December, and we don't get a new superintendent until partway through, and then we have all these other things like holidays, it does become a bit of a mess in there. So how do we give time to do this process really deeply and thoroughly without just being like, no more committees, or yes, these committees, or you know what I mean? Like it felt like but we were hearing a lot of feedback that this was kind of, it was becoming like an issue here, and here. So we need to look at it, but we need time.
Can we perhaps use our committee time in the next few months between now and the end of the year to meet to evaluate the committees as opposed to the normal business of the committees?
So the committees are not evaluating themselves.
Well, to have a discussion about looking back at the last year or two, do we feel that we were effective? What could
Also,
be done
why are the
differently?
committees not evaluating themselves?
Okay, I guess what I'm looking for from this is the board needs to have direction for what the purpose of the committees is. So we need to hear, we need to talk about, we need to think about it. But, is the purpose of our student achievement committee, is it to look at, that was established because we saw the difference in test scores and we wanted to make sure that we were doing things to raise those scores. And so we've seen some presentations from that, but now we need to reassess, okay, what is being delivered to the board and to the district and the community from each committee. The wellness committee had amazing tangibles that were put out and are really like helpful and came out of, okay, the board feels like this is really an issue. We really want to support it in this way. Here's what we're doing. And it came out of lots of bigger things, right? So we might say, hey, yeah, we feel really strongly that committee. But what I was hoping more is that district staff members who were leading those committees could take that time to do what they needed to do, whether that's calling a meeting of their committee, polling people, and then bringing it back and saying, okay, here's this committee, here's what we've done, and those kind of things.
So we're putting it onto the district committee leadership then to decide what the next step should be. That's what that sounds like.
To bring back information to the board. So they're leading their committees, right? We've assigned a district leader for each of our committees. That's what we've done. And so we need to hear feedback from them about, and us about those committees.
So what I did hear from several staff members is that they really didn't have anything to present last year at some of the meetings. And it was just like, why are we meeting? And so it was almost, I want to say a waste of time, but they really didn't have anything of value to present. And then the other case, some of the other things that I heard is that meetings weren't well attended. And of course, that's not for every group, right? But they had a lot of concerns, and they wanted to take the time out to really look at what do we expect from each group, and what are some of the outcomes. So that did come up last year, and so this would be a time for us to really look at all of our committees to see, are we meeting the goals? If we met the goals, should we continue this committee? If not, then maybe we should come up with some different goals and align them to the district goals. So there's some work that needs to be done that we haven't done in a while.
I think for the sake of time, it would probably be in the best interest to table this item until the next meeting so that board members have more time to mull over what we think would be an effective plan before we actually put anything on pause. Because I don't think it's effective if we just put it on pause, but we don't know what's supposed to happen in the interim. I would be most comfortable with that decision just so that we have more time to think this through and, come up with solutions before making a final decision.
And if it's the board's will, I can basically do some homework and find out, what's needed for each of the committees. And then if we table this and bring this back, I can do a little bit more homework in terms of what we need to do. But I do think that we do need some time to really assess some of these committees to see if this is what we really want, and staff can do that.
I agree, but also I don't want to create more work for you because I think the general consensus is we do think, or I don't want to speak for the board, but I do think the consensus is we do need the pause. It's just more so like, what are we going to do to make sure we're, like, what's the proper avenue or channels to do this assessment or, just figuring that out. I think that's the only thing that we really need to figure out.
Well, I was looking at just more what are some of the concerns,
Okay, yeah.
not really doing a lot of homework.
I don't want to create any unnecessary or additional,
But I do want to remind the board that one of the things that we talked about in terms of a pause is because we had so many other things going on.
Yeah.
And to give this the type of attention that it needed, that was one of the reasons why we thought that maybe we need to focus on these other things that are more important, because right now we got to find a CB, we got to find a superintendent, we got to get 2 new board members, there's a lot of things that's going on right now, and so it's just a matter of where we want to put all of our attention. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Let's take public comment on this before we vote to either table, move it forward, or move it forward with bringing it back next meeting for more digging in it. Those are all totally available options. If you're in person, please approach the podium, and if you're in our virtual audience, please raise your hand.
Who are you taking first? In person, okay. Good evening, everyone. Neil Castillo McIntyre, co-founding member of the Albany Disability Squad. Just a couple of comments on the item that you were discussing just now. The first one is general. It's about nomenclature. A difference between a committee and a task force, and we know both. A committee has ongoing responsibilities, and a task force meets for a specific purpose for a discrete period of time, and then they do a deliverable. So if you were thinking about a task force like the adult transition program relocation, that would be a task force, and I think we do have, maybe we don't, a presentation to give if the board is open to it. Of course, we would have to check with the special education director, Brian Biggs. And then the other piece of the comment is kind of more specific to the Special Education Advisory Committee, and that is, you mentioned, President Davidson, that in order for the committees to be of value to the board, I'm quoting or misquoting or paraphrasing very loosely, but something to the effect that, that it would have to be aligned with the goals of the board. And so, thank you. We would love for special education to become a permanent part of the goals of the Board of Education in Albany. It's not a new request, but since you brought it up, I would love to bat that and thank you as you do it. Thank you.
I think also that I was just clarifying that we have some committees that are board appointed and then they have to meet all Brown Act requirements, which if you ever decide to become a board member, you'll know are huge and really started to impact some of our committees this last year. And then if you're an advisory committee, that's a little bit looser. And so, you know, there's also those conversations to have. All right, any other public comment? All right, seeing none, if anyone has a vote in any direction, now is the motion, in any direction. We will take it now.
I move that we table this item until we've had a chance to figure out a game plan for what next steps will be once the committees are paused.
Okay, so I'd just like to ask if we do that, who's figuring out the game plan? And if it becomes an agenda item at our next meeting, that means that it's under Brown Act requirements, so only certain people can meet and discuss that. And so, you know, I will say that some of us have already had discussions about it and things like that, so it does just limit that. So if you have any ideas, I think we should like build those in right now.
This doesn't exactly respond to that, but it's related and it's something that I wanted to say. The fact that some of us know what we're talking about and the rest of us don't is problematic. Like I just, you know, there's a lot of, some people think, some people say, some people whatever, and I know like what the Brown Act things are, and I'm not saying it's an intentional thing, I'm just saying that me sitting here, I feel like really ignorant as to a whole lot of what, like apparently there are lots of issues. I was on at least 3 committees. They all functioned in very different ways. Some were well attended, some weren't, some had tangible deliverables, some didn't. I don't know what you guys are talking about, but like, I don't know what those issues are. So I understand Brown Act concerns, but I need to understand what we're talking about in order for me to make an informed decision about anything. So I can be a part of the people who figure out what the next steps look like. I don't mind doing that. But I need to get under the tent.
For the sake of Brown Act, I think it would be best if, and I am going to create more work for you, Dr. Evans, I'm sorry, in that I think we should table the item until you've had a chance to have a one-on-one with every single board member. At that point, I think you'll be able to lead a discussion with the president and vice president as to what format we're going to develop for this process, because I understand that, you know, we can't all discuss this as it'll be a future agenda item, so I think that'll be the safest way to ensure we're following Brown Act, but also ensuring that everybody has a chance to ask questions, have their questions answered, and so forth. Sorry.
I mean, I guess, so what we would be doing is tabling the decision on whether we pause the committees the next meeting. I'm just making sure that I understand. So we're saying we'll take the 2 weeks to do our one-on-ones with Dr. Evans and give our individual board member feedback, bring this back, and then we'll vote on whether or not we pause them to prepare to do this deeper work, which is totally fine.
I guess I should, rescind my motion since we're still discussing.
Okay.
I guess the other workaround is that we could approve this item as is with the added amendment that by the next meeting or within the next 2 meetings that Dr. Evans is able to either do a board update or a because, we have our board updates versus these meeting updates in one of those settings that you relay to us what the final decision is. I don't know how others feel about that, so.
I would rather personally not approve this as is. I don't love the on hold until January 2025, which is a part of this, I think. So, also, I don't know if we want to split or I don't know if we're even able to, if the handbook and the district committee should all be together, or.
It can be a split.
Okay.
We can split, we can also adjust the date. We can also build in some steps to say with, this happening and this happening, or with, so I think it makes sense, maybe this is what you're looking for. We table this to next time, continue our discussion as a full board about how we want to see this process of assessing our committees go. Then we can launch into the process of doing that and use the time between now and our established end date that we can agree on as a board. You have to remember, someone has to bring this initially so we can open a conversation. So that's all this is doing from me, is saying, we need to open this conversation. What are we going to do? So if that's comfortable, I'll make a motion to say that we table this and bring it back as a review and action next meeting. And we will discuss at the next meeting the stepping stones to this process and the official dates.
Is that enough time for Dr. Evans to meet with everyone? I guess
Well,
that's true.
yeah, he doesn't,
Okay, then yeah, I'm okay.
If you-
I just don't want to rush Dr. Evans, that's all.
I don't know if I can do it all by the next board meeting.
And that's fair.
maybe the first one in September. That's fine, so we're gonna table this to first September meeting.
And I just need one more question answered. And what would be the outcome for each meeting with the board member?
I think it's just to get feedback from us on what we think are potential what we want the process to look like. The one-on-one, yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, a part of the one-on-one for me is to get a better understanding of what the issues are that have been raised with the various committees.
Would it be helpful if instead have those one-on-ones 100% and discuss that? That's totally up to each board member and the superintendent. Would it be helpful if because I'm happy to do this, sort of put together and pulled with Dr. Evans, kind of put together this committee, okay, this is kind of how it's functioning, this is what we've heard, here are the parameters, then there's this committee, this is kind of what we were gonna be building into, using this time for, and I'm happy to say that we could make that happen by that first September meeting, and then we can bring it back, and we can just start maybe having discussions, at a couple of the meetings as a board, and then say, hey, on this date, we're gonna bring this committee in, on this date, we're gonna have this committee, and building that in. But understanding maybe that we won't bring those committee decisions in until we get sort of our new board and superintendent in.
I'm happy to second the motion.
Okay. So the motion is that we're tabling this item until the first September meeting, at which point we will bring back the questions, concerns, data around each committee. And then the board will make its decision on whether or not we're pausing to do a deeper dive. Okay? I made the motion. Trustee Khan seconded. Do we want to roll call it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for beginning the discussion. Like we said earlier, the board has no time for everyone to discuss these things unless we do it here. And I was like, oh, we need to discuss this. There is literally no way to do it unless we just dump it out here. Yeah. Okay. And that also, sorry, we need to amend that. There's a second motion that needs to be made, and that's related to the governance handbook. I think the other thing is we could just say we're tabling our decision on what to do with the governance handbook till that first meeting in September as well. If people are comfortable with that? Okay. We just amend the motion to include the governance handbook. I apologize. Okay. Thank you. And we are now going to move on to our Board of Education midterm appointment, and this is our interviews and our review of applicants. I am going to ask for a 3-minute recess, and then we're going to come back and begin this process.
Great.
Okay. Okay, in the interest of all of your wonderful and very important time, not here just to listen to us, we are going to resume our meeting. Thank you. For this portion of the meeting, we are going to interview applicants for the vacant board member seat. This process is going to play out in a specific way. So there's 6 applicants for this 1 2-year term, and we are going to make an appointment tonight. All board deliberations and decisions and anything else is going to happen right here. We will not go into closed session. Nothing will happen behind closed doors. Everything is public information. So that will be. The way that this is going to work is we are going to randomly select the interview order, and our student board member Shepherd has graciously jumped in on our first meeting and said she will pull the order of names for it. So after that happens, we will take public comment on the process on this item, and then we will have our first interviewee come up to the podium. I guess that one is better. Okay. And the other candidates will be asked to leave the room and leave your devices in here. The reason for that is that we do not want people listening to the Zoom of the meeting while the other candidates are being interviewed. So in the interest of keeping this fair, we can you can set it in front of one of our district team right here. They will keep it safe. And so you'll be asked to step out of the room during that time, and then you'll be invited back in for your interview time. And then we're going to have everyone come back in when we have our conversation and deliberate and make our decision. So right now is the opportunity for public comment. So if you are here,
I believe there's a monitor outside that you can view the entire meeting on.
yeah,
Okay,
we're going to
okay.
put them in a different room. Yeah. Oh, no, just give your cell phones and sit out there. We're just going to and leave the door open. It's totally fine. No, we're going to put them in a different room for that time. Okay, so if there is public comment at this point in time, we're going to give 2 minutes. If you're in our virtual audience, please raise your hand. And if you're in person, please come up to the podium. All right. Seeing one here, we will take your comment.
Hi, my name is Greg Downs. I'm an Albany resident and have served on different committees for the school board as well as commissions for the city. I appreciate the many applicants, and I appreciate all your work in a very challenging time and job. And like I said, I do appreciate all of the applicants' willingness to do it. And I also just wanted to speak in behalf of one in particular, who's Brian Doss. Given the other things discussed today, having someone with knowledge of the board, knowledge of the school system, prior experience, as well as financial expertise seems especially meaningful. And then Brian has long been an advocate for the crucial question of access, which I think is a crucial question in our public schools. So I appreciate everyone's application and just wanted to put in a word for him. Thank you all.
All right, thank you for your comment. Seeing no other public comment, we are going to get right down to.
I just need to make a quick comment. I just learned that the TV outside has been turned off, and so the city is requesting that people just go out there.
Perfect.
Unless we want to put them in the conference room.
Well, no, they
It would,
would prefer we just put them out front in the hall. They turned off the TV.
they don't want people back there. Yeah.
They can go, we can put them in there. There's cookies.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll have everyone step out there. They've turned off the television for us. Okay, great. Oh, there's one other virtual commenter. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So good evening. Thank you, board members, for the quick opportunity to speak on behalf of one of the candidates. I am here in support of Ms. Jolene Gasman, primarily because I was very fortunate to work with her not only during COVID, but in the recovery. In the recovery part from getting back to the classrooms. So just knowing her work ethic, knowing how dedicated she's been to the students, not just in the sense of being a parent, but being in the classroom, being very much involved in Albany matters, Albany school matters in particular, and then being right there on the other side of being willing to do the work, be it as a part of a committee, as a parent, or as the person who's doing the cleanup or setup for any events. I know Jolene has been very forthcoming about her participation with Albany Unified. And as a parent whose child came through Albany Unified, I am ecstatic to see parents with younger children still bringing that enthusiasm back to the community. And I would love to see Jolene bring that to the board as well.
All right, thank you so much for your comment. Okay, this will be my last call for public comment if anyone else has one here or in the virtual audience. Okay, so we are going to move on and do our drawing for the order.
Jolene Gasman.
Okay, and if you'll give us just a second, I'm going to use it to just put my packets in the order. Okay. Jolene Gasman will be our first interview.
Jason Wittenberg.
Can I just ask, Parvin, I don't think Parvin is here, is she? No, okay. Might want to put her last for now.
Joshua Mahoney. Jared Brandt. Brian Doss. Parvin Seaver.
That was handy. Okay, great. And so each board member submitted 4 questions. Each question was related to one of our meeting norms that we read at the beginning of our meeting. And the board members will be able to select from those based on whichever question they're asking about. So it could be any one of the 4 that we choose to ask different candidates, but those were all in the agenda packet. And Julie Shen sent those all to the candidates, and you had a chance to review them. And that will kind of be how we go through this. I will open with a little question for each of you, and then Student Trustee Shepherd will end with a final question. Okay, and so we will ask everybody other than Jolene to step outside, please. And we have about 10 minutes per person, and we can be a little bit flexible because it looks like we may only have 5 of you, but we're going to try and stick to about 10 minutes each. Okay? Thanks, Kim. Can you be the door monitor? I moved the clothespin to your name on the job chart. Jolene, come on up to this microphone over here because then we get the camera, etc. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for applying and being here tonight. And if you want to just kind of give a little opening statement about yourself and just let us know kind of who you are, we'll give you a little time to do that now.
I love that. Good evening to the board. Good evening to everyone here. My name is Jolene Gasman. I've lived in Albany for 5 years now. I moved up here because I decided to go to school after having my first baby. And I wanted to go to my dream school. I ended up getting into KALB. So I moved my entire family up here, left everybody that we knew down in Southern California, which was terrifying, but also a really big blessing because without anybody here, we built our own community. We found people within the village. We started to create like these bonds and build our own little family up here. And I'm really grateful that I got to meet some of the people because they have become an integral part of my life. They're the people that I call in order to move. They're the people that watch my kids. I'll watch their kids. Like, they're the people that I can count on for everything. Albany has become the place where I grew my family. I had my second child about 4 months ago. So I'm really excited to be a part of this community. I really want to be part of the board because I would love to help those within our community. And that's all for right now. Thank you.
Okay. So if it's okay with you guys, we'll kind of mix up the order of who asks which question. Does that feel, or would you guys prefer to just do? Okay, I think we do it. So we'll just go reverse order this time, if you don't mind. Saudine, you'll ask question number 1, anyone from there. And do you have a copy of the questions in front of you?
I do.
Okay, great. Trustee Boyd, you'll be question 2, Vice President Hopwood, question 3, and I'll do question 4 for this round.
And we'll take it from one from each meeting, or, right? Or we
Right, yeah, you'll select, well, you'll select under meeting norm 3.
Yes, exactly.
You'll select one from there. This is a new process for us.
Okay, every decision that comes before the board has varying degrees of impacts on our students. In your decision-making process as a trustee, how would you ensure that our decisions are guided by what's best for our students?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Khan. I think that the biggest thing is that we can't do this alone. Part of being part of the board is working with the board, but also working for the community. I think that in order to figure out what we need to make sure that we are communicating with the community, all parts of the community, to find out what their wants, their needs, and their expectations are. And then I think that from there, that's when we would need to build a plan. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that I answered everything. I think that one of the best things to do is to reach out. We were talking about the committees earlier. A lot of those committees also deal with some of our vulnerable populations. There is the Special Education Committee. And in all transparency, my daughter's part of that, so that's near and dear to my heart. There are communities for Asian Americans. There are communities for our Black students, for our Indigenous students. I think that we need to reach out and make sure that we are helping to give that voice and to make sure that they have that mic so that they can speak on what they need. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Bye.
No, not what I meant to say. What are some rules or practices you think are important to ensure that everyone is treated with respect in board meetings?
Thank you so much for the question, Trustee Boyd. I think that one of the biggest thing is that we're going to disagree, right? It's normal. It would be really weird if we all agreed on everything all the time. But being part of the board, you want to make sure that you are a united front. So it's okay to have those disagreements when we are in discussion. We even saw that today. There were times when we were like not in sync, and I say we as the royal we. I know I'm not trustee right now. But when it comes down to it, once a decision is made, we remain a united front. I don't think that there should be any smack talking behind anybody's back. I think that it's okay to disagree with a topic, but not with a person. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway, because there does need to be that level of respect that permeates, otherwise we can't function as a board. Thank you.
Hi, Jolene. Thank you for being here. My question is, how would you work with school board members, staff, and stakeholders whose views differ from yours to resolve issues?
Thank you so much for the question, Vice President Hopwood. Please pardon me while I get my bearings real quickly. I would say that when working with school board members, staff members, stakeholders, and with views who are different from mine, again, we're going to go to that. We're going to disagree. But there is no progress without communication. There is no progress if we don't talk to one another. And moreover, there is no progress without compromise. We are, like I said earlier, not a monolith. We are not an echo chamber, and we are not a hive mind. We're a community, so we hope to come together, but we're going to have different ideas on what we want or maybe how to get there. Maybe we have like the same idea, we want the best for our community, but we're going to have differences in how we get there. The biggest thing that I can say is that I would work with them in a way that I bring out a civility. Like, there needs to be professionalism, there needs to be a civilness between us, even if we have differing ideas, and we need to try and find a way to work together. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And just so you know, we have plenty of time on your timer, so.
Okay.
Your time, okay? All right, question number 4. Can you share an experience where you may have had your mind set on a particular decision, but were open to feedback and discussion? What was the final outcome?
Thank you so much, President Davidson. Please bear with me.
Take your time.
This is going to be more of an unconventional answer. So I just want to tell you the story of my second child. She was born in March, and during that whole time, I remember thinking, I want to have a natural birth. I was so set on that because during my first birth, I felt like my voice was stripped. I felt like there were decisions that were made that I didn't agree with. And I was so keen on, I need to have the birth plan set this way, and nobody's going to make me deviate from this because they're not going to take away my voice. They're not going to take away my choice. There were some things that hindered that. The fact that I didn't find out that I was pregnant until 6 months into the pregnancy. The fact that when I found out, I also found out I had gestational diabetes, and I had preeclampsia. I had a slew of different health problems, but I was just so set on, I need to do it this way. And it wasn't until I got into the hospital about to deliver that a midwife came in, and she talked with me, and we were able to have that open dialogue. She was able to listen to me and understand why I was so hesitant about doing my birthing plan any other way than what I had set out in the plan that I had laid. But if the fact that she was able to communicate with me was the only reason why I was able to get past my past traumas. The fact that she was able to communicate with me was the only reason why I was able to deviate from that set plan and to open my mind to other options. I know this isn't like the conventional way to answer that question, but it's still part and parcel with what we're talking about. Sometimes we're so set in our goal that we don't want to look at anything else. And it's not until we talk and have those conversations and communicate and voice some of our fears, some of our doubts, that we're able to come up with another solution or have our minds open to another avenue that maybe we didn't know we were open to before. And so that was a time when I was so set on something and changed my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to close this out with the final question?
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
Thank you so much for that question. I think that the only thing that I would want to say is that I'll be perfectly transparent with everybody here. I am newer to this process. I am very green when it comes to a lot of things, but I think that the one thing that I want everybody to know is that I'm I'm really, really passionate about making sure that I can help service this community that I've grown to love. I want to be in there. I want to be having those conversations. I want to be able to take those conversations back to the board and to help make decisions that will help benefit everybody. So if that is the last thing that I say, then I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of those wonderful answers and for being here. And we'll have you step outside now and we'll call you back in shortly.
Oh, one last thing.
Yeah.
I actually have a copy of just the questions. Is it okay that I leave it up here? Would
That's
that be
great.
okay?
That would be very helpful. Thank you. All right, we're going to call in Jason Wittenberg next, please. We will mix it up. I'll give you guys a couple minutes, but question 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay?
Everyone.
Okay, I'm just going to reset my timer.
Okay, thank you.
Should I start with question 1 or?
1 second, sorry. Okay. This is a whole new process, isn't it? Okay, welcome. Thank you, Jason Wittenberg, for being here. And so we're going to, each board member will ask a different question from the question bank in there.
Yep.
And you'll have a couple minutes to answer. I'm just loosely timing the 10 minutes over here, so I'll just kind of let you know if we're getting close on anything. And then first, we'll just lead off with, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself? Tell us about you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I've been in Albany for 11 years. We live, steps away on Stanage. I have a 7-year-old daughter that's going to the 2nd grade tomorrow. She's also special needs. She has an IEP, all of that, and so I'm very invested. She's going to Marin. I'm very invested, obviously, not just in the special education, but the overall quality of the school system. We're very grateful to be in Albany, where the schools are good the whole way. I came to the area in 2005 to work at UC Berkeley. And I think I can hopefully make a contribution.
Okay, we'll start in on the other questions.
Hello.
Hi.
What are your priorities for how to improve the services we provide to students or maintain them if you don't think any improvements are needed?
Okay. So on this, so we were at Ocean View during the construction, and now we're at Marin. And I actually don't have a lot of complaints about either Ocean View or Marin, at least at the TKK and 1st grade levels. We've had a very good experience, including in the special education department. And so it would be more, at that level, it's more on the maintenance side. Obviously, so apropos of Ms. Khan's comment earlier about relationships with the government, I sit on a committee at UC Berkeley in which we have exactly the same conversations. How to make do with fewer resources and ways to get the state and other things, other places to, give us more, funding. And one of the things I've learned in my research just on that thing is that personal relationships matter with Sacramento a lot. So there's like a formal way, there's like an education committee, but as I'm told, what really matters is fostering personal relationships with the people that matter. This might be true also in Alameda County. I'm less sure about that, but for sure it's true in Sacramento. And so one of the things that could be done for AUSD is to try and foster some of those relationships and learn the real way things work in Sacramento. As it happens, I was rooting around in preparation for the questions, and I found this a local accountability report for 24-25 in which the district lays out its plans. And one of the things that I was shocked about was the amount of regression since 2019. I realized the pandemic occurred, but and especially that the middle school was in the red, danger range for certain subgroups of people. I believe it was Hispanics and special needs things about math scores. And so, more broadly, I read through this document and, I don't necessarily have the answers, but these would definitely be my priorities to get more people meeting these California-wide, standards.
All right.
Go on, but maybe there's more, yeah.
We have more questions.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for being here. What are some rules or practices you think are important to ensure that everyone is treated with respect in board meetings?
Yeah. So I would say, there should be not ad hominem attacks. I think that everybody, from other board, or for anybody, from the audience, from anything. Okay, so, if people are making comments, and I think people should listen respectfully and try and, even when it's not clear what the point of the comment is, as it must often occur, you're looking for, I think we owe the questioner the responsibility to try and infer something. And the way I've done it, when I've been faced with this, is I go back and I say, if I understand you correctly, this is what you're saying. And then I lay out what I think is the, main point of the question. And so that would be one way of doing that. There should not be ad hominem, we should discourage ad hominem attacks, it's not about the person, it's about the, so if you're going to attack anything or disagree, it should be with the idea and not the person. It should not be phrased that way. And that, people don't come to people come to this because they have a genuine interest. And so I think the assumption should be that everybody has good intentions and that, it's good to attribute it to that unless there's, incontrovertible proof otherwise.
Thank you, great.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you so much for answering all of these. Okay. Hypothetical, you want a certain sport at Albany High School to receive more funding than another, but the majority of the board wants to give equal funding to all sports. How would you advocate that it is best for students to fund each sport differently?
Yes, that's a super good question from the group. So the first way I would advocate for this, that I would say that not all sports have equal needs. So there are some sports like cross country that don't have the same, say, equipment or what have you as football, and so, or swimming, for example, either for equipment or like maybe the health needs, like golf is different from, again, football or maybe swimming, in terms of the probability of injury. And so, different sports have different needs. And so what is equal, so there's like a different standard for equal, and it's not a monetary standard. Is each sport getting, being made to be sort of at an equivalent level given the baseline of the sport that they're in. So golf compared to what golf people need and get elsewhere, and then football compared to what football needs elsewhere. So that would be one for sure thing. And the second would be, I would say, something I would call the demand. There are maybe more people involved in some sports than other sports, and the relative, I don't know how you measure popularity, but maybe the popularity also, among the people of Albany. And so, I'm not sure how all of these would, I don't have the formula for how all of these would fit together, but these are absolutely considerations that would need to be studied a bit more closely, which I would think militant against, if I understand the question correctly, like an equal amount of money per sport. Maybe per student would be better, already maybe an equal per student that participates in the sport would be better than an equal amount per sport. That's how I would start.
Thank you for that.
And your last and final question, I had it and then I lost it. Can you share an experience where you may have had your mind set on a particular decision, but you were open to feedback and discussion? What was the final outcome?
Yeah, so, in my capacity in my job at UC Berkeley, I sit on a lot of committees that, for example, make hiring decisions. And there's very frequently a disagreement and sometimes very deep disagreement on, over candidates. It's like I and my, not just me, but my colleagues also, we're all open to argumentation. You have to be open to good faith argumentation. And again, you impute sort of, as your documents say, it's like everybody what's best for the students. So you impute that to people, that they want what's best for the organization, and people reasonably differ on it. And I find that the way you sort of come to not a consensus, but you make peace with whatever happens if it goes against you, is you have conversations and then you realize that either I am working with wrong data or somebody else is working with wrong data, but you don't necessarily know that from the initial speeches. It's like it takes a little, we can call it a debate, but it takes a little conversation to figure out what the points of agreement and disagreement are. And so, I'm sorry, the question was, how do I accept it, or? Under what norm? So meeting norm?
It says, can you share an experience?
Oh, yes, okay.
You may have had your mind set.
Yeah, so I can. It was over a hiring, so let me just make it concrete since it's asking me about an experience and not a hypothetical. I was part of a disagreement over a hiring decision, and I definitely had my mind set on a certain way. And my mind was not changed on the quality, on the things that I found important in the candidate, but the decision went the other way, and of course I understood, so I didn't change my mind in this case, but I did understand that the people that were advocating in favor of this candidate were simply using kind of different criteria. Now, they weren't the criteria that I would have thought were most important, but they were valid. They were not invalid criteria. So, these things happen. You respect your colleagues and, you move on.
Thank you. All right, Student Board Member Shepherd.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
Let's see. No, other than that, there are other fine candidates. I do think that my experience at on these committees at Berkeley, not to mention being a parent in the school, does give me a certain perspective, on things. We are getting our money from the same source after all, and so I wish you a happy deliberation. Thank you very much. You intimated that we were going to stay here.
No, you're going to go back out, and then we'll call you back in.
I'd like to put my daughter to bed. Can I?
You don't have to be here for, you can listen to the deliberations at home, because we'll make our decision, and then the appointment will be tomorrow.
Okay.
But we do often go late in our board meetings, so just keep that in mind. All right.
So I'm going to leave, but don't take that as,
All right.
I want to get home first.
Good night to her. Thank you. All right, our next candidate is Josh Mahoney. Or Joshua, sorry. Should not abbreviate people's names until I ask. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're 3.
Hi.
Totally did that wrong. Sorry. Really not do this more often. Okay. Sorry. Hi, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you being here. We'd like to give you the opportunity to start by just telling a bit about yourself, give us some background and some information, whatever you'd like to share. You have a couple minutes, and I'm just loosely timing the 10 minutes-ish over here. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks again for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. My name's Josh Mahoney. I've been an Albany resident since 2011. Got 2 kids, one who's both products of Albany schools. My daughter recently graduated in May of this year, is off to college next week, all the feels. And my son is a junior at Albany High. Education's been super important to me and throughout my life. Really started my career in education. So not to sound trite, I'm the son of a teacher. My aunt worked at the Department of Education in the Office of Special Education Projects. And so when I got out of college, the first thing I did was I started teaching. I taught math in Northern Alabama for junior high and high school. And later I moved to DC and did a bunch of work at the University of Maryland in the use of technology by students with disabilities, as well as doing some work on the Hill for an educational nonprofit. When we moved out here, to be honest, I got an attack, quite frankly, couldn't get a job in education at that time. It was first .com boom, and I started working in tech, and I've been working in leadership positions in product management at companies of various sizes, from startups to companies as large as The Gap. In all of those roles, I've been able to kind of really bring different groups of people together. I don't know how much this group knows about technology product management, but at the end of the day, it's a position where you've got a lot of responsibility, but not a lot of authority. And it's a lot about bringing people together to align on what good decisions look like, how do you make hard choices, because like most of us, I worked at companies where we had unlimited wants and limited needs, limited means, and had to make hard choices about what to do. And so you had to bring groups together across different functions to come up with what the right things to do that would have the biggest impact, in my case, on the business. Since COVID, I've been much more focused on how do I get back out of retail and some of those areas where I worked to be in places where it resonated much more with me personally, and hence my return to kind of coming back to education. Last job I was just in, I was a startup doing work on menopause, because, not to overshare, sorry, my wife started going through perimenopause during COVID, and for me it was important to work on things that were close to my heart. And so that's one of the reasons I started working in that space, and one of the reasons why I'm here today to throw my hat in the ring to try and help out my kids. As a leader of those companies, I think one of the key skills I can bring is, I hired and built lots of great teams, and really at executive levels as well. So, hired the head of OldNavy.com back in the day, chief marketing officers, chief revenue officers and those sorts of people. And knowing what we have ahead of us in terms of the key hires that we've got to make in terms of the superintendent position, I think that's something that I can help bring to the table in terms of like what those hiring really senior people who are really great needs to be, because obviously we've got a huge hole to fill.
I'm going to pause you there so
yeah.
we can move into the questions. Thank you for all of that great information. And Vice President Hopwood's going to start us with question 1, and we'll each choose from those 4 under the meeting norm, and then you have them in front of you as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Hi, thank you for being here. My question is, a board conversation is shifting to a political debate. How would you help shift the focus back to what is best for students?
Yeah, a big aspect of my leadership style is what I like to call inquiry over advocacy. Curiosity is a value that I think has been important to me, important for us as a family in terms of raising my kids with that skill as well. And so when I think about a political debate starting to happen on a board conversation, I think it's really about asking questions to politely steer the conversation back to what it's really about. Like somebody here used, I think Trustee Boyd used my favorite phrase, which is, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? And by asking those types of good questions, you kind of nudge in a polite sort of way to bring the conversation back to what's really important. Albany's really all about grade. I mean, most of us are here from an Albany perspective because of the educational system. And so I think bringing it back to students, doing it in that sort of way is a really easy way to do it. That's how I think about it.
Thank you. What do you think of the current AUSD board meeting format, and can you identify any areas for improvement? How would you help maintain the culture of civility we've established in the last 20 months?
Yeah, and I'll be transparent. I haven't been to every board meeting or watched every board meeting over the last 20 months, so apologies. What I will say is one of the things I really appreciate about the board, I'll start with that, is the tone of civility and respect is apparent. And I think that's no pun intended. And I think that's super important to continue to maintain. I think, we've seen in too many places where even school board conversations in a community like ours can become uncivil and what have you. And so kudos to all of you for maintaining that standard. I think whoever comes on board here needs to be keenly aware that that's going to be really important going forward. I would like to see more conversation. I actually saw a little bit more back and forth today, and some honesty and transparency I think was really good. I think for some of us, myself included, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I learn by talking about things and having that conversation and dialogue. And I think as you think about engagement with the community and bringing people along to understand the whys of decisions, that's super important. I realize limitations of Brown Act or whatever, but in this forum, that's a place where having those conversations I think can be lead to both better outcomes and also kind of better engagement from the community at large. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Thank you.
And question number 3, for meeting norm 3 question, I don't know if I like to see.
I may not do this, but it's okay.
So as a board member, it's important for us to engage with all stakeholders, students, parents, staff, and really everyone in our community. However, we may not see eye to eye on all issues that come before us. Can you give an example of how you would navigate conflicts within the board and or with stakeholders?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I read into that sort of question. So one of which is kind of the how, but also kind of the stylistic sort of thing about what that might look like. One of my leadership principles is really was what I like to call the reasonable people principle. I think more often than not, when I've seen conflict, it's largely where people have asymmetry of information and they're not talking to one another. I'm a big fan of what I call go have a cup of coffee with that person. And usually what you find that people have the same goal, but they have different points of view or different experiences that are leading to kind of that sort of conflict. So quite frankly, step 1 is often just having that dialogue and engaging that sort of conversation. I think there are going to be disagreements. If there were no disagreements, we wouldn't need to have these sort of conversations. And like I said earlier, the respect that this board has kind of had for one another, I think is pretty key. So continue to be respectful. There are going to be decisions that happen that if I were on the board, I would probably disagree with. Still have them. Then it's a disagree and commit sort of situation which is what I've had to do in business many different times. So I don't know if that answers what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Hi, so I am meeting norm 4, and I'm going to ask question 3, in case it's helpful to know that. Can you share an experience where you may have had your mind set on a particular decision, but were open to feedback and discussion? What was the final outcome?
I'll give you a couple examples, one like from a business context and one maybe a little more lighthearted. From a business context, so as I said earlier, so I've worked primarily in the technology space. One of the key decisions we often have to make is, do we build something or do we buy it, right? Do we buy software that already exists, or do we build it ourselves? By the way, engineers almost always want to build it themselves. Product people, I like to think we're trying to moderate things, like if we can get the market faster on something out by buying it, let's do that. I was at a company called The Real Rio, which is a managed marketplace for luxury fashion. And we were opening stores and had to decide what we wanted to do for a point of sale. I had a bias towards buying. My engineers had a bias towards building. And one of the reasons I had a bias towards buying is I was like, I don't think this is a strategic advantage for us. And so, but what we did is we kind of sat down and had the honest conversation about where all the different places it was going to end up working out. And the answer was there were some other key components of our technology stack, which I won't get into, that requires us to do a bunch of work regardless. It would actually be a little bit easier. By having that dialogue, we ended up building the thing ourselves, and I was a wholehearted champion for that. On a more lighter note, or more recent note, I don't know if we have any Olympics fans, but I am, particularly track and field, since my son's a runner. And before about a year ago, I kind of thought Noah Lyles was a little bit of a braggart and a little bit pompous and arrogant. My son and I had the great fortune of being able to go up to Eugene, Oregon, for the U.S. track and field trials just to watch, not participating, unfortunately, for better or for worse. And was able to see Noah Lyles win the trials. I saw him after he won. He went around the entire stadium and gave every fan that was still there a high five, and caused me to go look at him in a different way. Not just from that, I actually did a bunch of research and realized about him from a having overcome asthma and ADD and whatever, what have you. But his commitment, I mean, he literally went around the stadium and high-fived every single individual, including my son. And I have a completely different respect for him in terms of what he did because of that. So maybe not quite the example we were looking for, but it's definitely one of the ones that came to mind when I thought about the question.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Look, I mean, I think obviously this is a really important position to fill. We've got a bunch of challenges ahead of us, as we always do. Like, I think obviously filling the superintendent position is super important for us. Not just replacing the hole that Dr. Wells' unfortunate passing has left, but just quite frankly having a firm set of leadership that we can then partner with to figure out how to move things forward. I think one of the things I can bring to the table is that, like, I've worked in a space where I understand not only how to hire those sorts of individuals, but also work in spaces where I also understand that the work is also never done. People always want more. We don't have enough funding. There are unlimited wants, and there are limited things and hard choices we're going to have to make. And because of that, I think I've got some experience about thinking about how to make those frameworks and do those sorts of things to help us get the good outcomes that hopefully benefit the bulk of the district. If that helps.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
We'll call you back in a few minutes. Okay. I'll ask question 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I love when you guys state them. It helps me write them down. We're going to go with Jared Brandt. Well, I should say Jared Brandt is next in our lineup. No, we're going to just go with you. You have been selected next. Hi, welcome. So we're going to give you a few minutes to start. Just tell us a little bit kind of about yourself, what brings you here, and then we're going to go down each board member. We'll ask a question under one of the meeting norms. We'll choose from the 4 and, of course, state it to you. And then our student board member will finish us out with a final question. And I'm going to just loosely time about 10 minutes over here.
Great.
Okay. So if you want to just get started and tell us a little bit.
I'm Jared Brandt. I've lived in Albany twice. I moved back roughly 5 years ago. I have a 8th grader. I'm a single parent, so I have her half-time. And last year I decided to get much more involved in the PTA, so I helped with the auction and trying to get a lot more involved in her sports. I don't have a lot of volunteer experience. I've always had more than one activity. I own a winery in Berkeley, and then I also do technology consulting. So I just didn't have a lot of time. Both of my daughters, I have 2 daughters. The older daughter went straight through in private school. My younger daughter, when I got separated, I was a big believer in public education. And so one of the reasons I moved back to Albany is I wanted to switch her to Albany schools, and eventually, like 2 years after I got separated, I was able to do that. So that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. I am going to start us out with meeting norm 1. Every decision that comes before the board has varying degrees of impact on our students. In your decision-making process as a trustee, how would you ensure that your decisions are guided by what's best for all of our students? And that's question 3 under meeting norm 1.
I think this is like a quick 2-part answer to this question. So I've done some, I think when you have a question where it's easy to get dissuaded or maybe influenced by things, it's good to think about the question and try to come up with the criteria. And I'll give you a really quick example. I landed on a project where I was helping a large company with a logo redesign. And it's not my background at all. It was because someone quit and I was a consultant there, and they're like, this is not your project. And the logo designer said, you're never gonna, you don't know anything about logos. He was the guy who did Samsung's logo. He's really famous. He's like, so come up with the criteria, get the board to agree to the criteria, and then your decision gets to be a lot easier. So that's when I think about decision making. I often think about it not like coming up with that criteria early on so that I don't get influenced. Makes sense.
And I have meeting norm 2, and for this one, it's question 3, which is AUSD serves employees and works with I think this is worded weird. Yes, serves employees and works with a diverse range of people. How would you use your position as a board member to uplift marginalized communities and create a safe environment for all views to be expressed?
Great question, and I don't know that I gave that one enough thought ahead of time. I'd have to think about it some more. I think, again, I think that when you have a marginalized community, giving them a voice and actually really respectfully listening to them, in the consulting world, we always talk about active listening. I kind of hate that term, but actively listening and making sure that they have a voice would probably be the first thing so that they can participate. So truly marginalized, I think reaching out to them is also really important. So I'm involved a little bit with an organization in an adjoining city that's an urban farm, and they're trying to, and it's just happenstance that I'm involved with them, but they're trying to get a lot more of the community in that city involved in farming. And some of their big obstacles are just people don't know how to get involved. They don't know how to even get intimidated by the process. And I think if you just sit down and listen, I think that's a really impactful way to go about it.
Thank you.
Hello, I am picking a question from meeting norm 3, and I'm reading question 4, in case that's helpful. How would you work with school board members, staff, and stakeholders whose views differ from yours to resolve issues?
It's funny, because I was here earlier, and I heard that everything goes through the superintendent. So I think in every, I don't know, maybe not every career, but lots of careers that there's always differing opinions, and so I'm right now doing a project where I'm consulting for a large hedge fund, and they have a lot of internal politics, and I think on all those when there's I have some very diverse views on some of the technology things that they're doing than they have, and then stepping back and listening to their needs, because sometimes those diverse views, you can find a lot of commonality in them. They might want the outcome that you want. I think if you assume goodwill and you talk to people and assume that they have a similar desire and a similar outcome, that goes a long ways. I'm also a big advocate of just, I don't necessarily want to say FaceTime because I think you can use it on email or other mechanisms, but really trying to communicate, I think, would be the biggest thing.
Hi. Can you think of a time where you started a discussion or debate on one side of an issue, but through listening to others ended up changing your mind? Tell us about that. Meeting norm 4, question 1.
I read through the questions, but I didn't memorize the numbers, so.
No.
Yeah, I don't have my glasses on.
Oh, don't
so
worry. Have mine.
I can put them on. Yeah, I can. So my significant other often has opinions that greatly differ than mine, and very specifically, she's Jewish, and she's with the conflict in Gaza right now. We've had a lot of very different opinions, and like dramatically different opinions. And I think it's funny because all 4 of these questions remind me about communications. There's been multiple times where I have said something probably radical from her viewpoint, and she's had a radical viewpoint. But sitting down and listening to her and listening to the points, I can come to understand it. And maybe I don't completely agree with her viewpoint, but at least I'm open to it afterwards. So I think I think it's fascinating. All 4 of these questions are really about communication. I think active listening is really important. There's all sorts of techniques that you can use, like you can repeat questions back to people. So you make sure you understand the question. You can do clarifying questions. It's being actively engaged, I think, is the most important thing.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
I do. I'm really wanting to give back to my community. So as a small business owner, I've donated to Albany for their Dinner with Albany for many years, sponsored Dinner with Albany. And when my daughters started at Albany Middle School, it was, the middle school's been great. It's the easiest way to say it. Like, I've been going through a really hard divorce, and her teachers and her counselor, they're all awesome. And so I really wanted to give something back to the school. So I don't have I don't have the traditional background, like the questions about the volunteering and stuff. I was like, I'm never gonna, I was wondering if I should even bother to fill it out at one point. But I'd really like to give back. I have a lot of experience with technology. I have a lot of experience with really tough economic times for a small business. So I understand those 2 things, and I'd like to bring them, and I'm really committed to my daughter. That's it.
Thank you so much. We're going to have you join the others in the hall, and then we're going to call in Brian Doss. Oh, we'll be back to the start. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hi, thank you for joining us today and applying. So we're going to start this with just having you tell a little bit about yourself, kind of why you're here, just a little background, and then we'll go into it. Each of us will ask 1 question from the selection under each meeting norm. You'll answer those, and then our student trustee will finish out the interview.
Sure.
Sorry, I'll loosely time like 10 minutes over here.
Okay. My name is Brian Doss. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here. Been in the district for 17 years or so. There was a brief gap but prior to that because I graduated from Albany High. And then I just had so much fun in Albany that when I had the opportunity, I came back. But now I'm here, have 3 students currently in the district, 1 student at ACC, 1 student at Ocean View, and 1 student at the high school. I have always had a passion for what education means to students, specifically what access means. So when it was time to decide where they should go to school, AUSD was a no-brainer. And I had an opportunity to give a little bit more back. I started at the school site level as the site council president at Marin. Had so much fun doing that, I decided to dip my toe into the PTA. And then I guess when that got boring, I decided to run for the board and was able to serve there for 4 years. But I think that with all the different things that I've done within the district, the one thing that I've always been consistent with is the belief in our students and the abilities that they have. They all have the abilities to succeed. They don't all succeed in the same way. You know, it's our collective community's job to access those abilities so that they can strive. And so regardless of what portion or area I decide to participate in, whether it be jumping into something more formal like the board or something less formal like stopping and talking with a student that needs advice or has a question about what's next, I approach it the same way, which is if given the right tools, you can do whatever it is that you decide that you want to do. And so that's me.
All right, thank you.
I'll be doing question 1. So it's meeting norm 1. There should be a paper in front of you in case you need that, but I'm going to do question 3, which is every decision that comes before the board has varying degrees of impacts on our students. In your decision-making process as a trustee, how would you ensure that your decisions are guided by what's best for all of our students?
Well, I think that it's important to understand the impact of the decisions that we make. The way that we understand those decisions is by gaining the knowledge, right? So if you're going to make a decision about a particular area in the district, you need to understand where that is, what it is, what happens there, who's affected by the decision that you're making. And if that decision is informed, then you go to the next step, which is what's best for students, right? So as long as you ask that question in each decision that you're making, I think that you'll be okay. So to kind of sum up that question, I gather all the facts. I don't just assume that I know because I've been here a long time, right? I go and figure it out and ask questions. Talk to people, right? If I'm making a decision about the high school, then I reach out to the folks who are going to be affected by that and ask them the questions in order to be able to make that decision. And then also, while staying within the rules, right? Talking to one other board member, listening to what they have to say, you know, kind of talking a little bit there. And then coming to the meeting and listening to what everybody has to say, engaging in that dialogue, and then working together to make a decision that's best for the district.
Hello. I have meeting norm number 2, and I'm going to ask question 1. What are some rules or practices you think are important to ensure that everyone is treated with respect in board meetings?
Well, I think the most important rule is exactly that. It's in the question of respect. So treat everybody with respect, regardless of how you feel about their opinion. So on a board, there's more than one person, right? Which means there's going to be more than one opinion. And I can always agree with what the person is saying, but it's important to listen to them. But it's also important to hear what they're saying, right? Not to just let it go in one ear and out the other, but to really digest what they're saying so that you can process it. And so that's how you work together as a team, because the board is a team. It's a team governing over the district to help, guide us in the right direction. So it's important to respect everybody. And then I think also remembering that regardless of the decision that's made, or regardless whether you disagree with the person or not, once that item or once that's done, once you're done deliberating that, you have to let that be where it is, not holding any animosity towards a person or anything like that, because there's still more decisions to be made, and you need to come with your best self in order to make that next decision. If you hold on to the previous one, it makes it hard to deliberate on the next item.
Hi. I'm asking question 2 from meeting norm 3, which is, you want a certain sport at AHS to receive more funding than another, but the majority of the board wants to give equal funding to all sports. How would you advocate that it is best for students to fund each sport differently?
Well, I go back to what I previously said, right? Because I'm not anything but consistent, right? So what's best for students, right? So you have to evaluate each sport. Where is the sport standing currently? And how can this positively affect the student's ability to participate in that sport? And it depends on what our goal is, right? Some of our sports are very competitive. So if our goal is to be competitive with the other districts, then we want to look into that, right? Because competitive is not just about winning and losing, right? Competitive is about safety. So for example, the football team, right? Decisions were made. But if we don't put a competitive team on the field, it's not safe for the young people that are competing, right? So putting all that into place. So thinking about doing the research, right? Do you know about each sport? Do you know the rules? What is the equipment? Have you talked to the coaches? What are they saying that they need? It just really has to be an informed decision. I know that it sounds better to say, well, just give equal to everybody. But if you just give equal to everybody, then some people still have less. So you have to really kind of dive into it to make an informed decision. So that's why the board is in place, right? So that we would do the research, gather that information, and then make the decision that's best for the sport that needs it.
All right, I'm doing meeting norm number 4, and I'm going to ask question number 4. Would you be able to advocate for a course of action while accepting a decision you strongly disagree with? Can you give an example of how you've compromised to resolve an issue effectively?
So I think that when you serve on a board and you're going through and you're making different decisions, you're not going to always agree with the outcome, right? Because you're going to vote. It could be 3-2, it could be 4-1. Regardless of what it is, it might not be the outcome that you originally wanted. However, in order for the district to run smoothly and in order for everybody to have confidence in what the board is doing at that level, you have to be united once the decision is made. So I could think of a few examples. I think that the easiest example would be there was a vote where, and I'm going to be kind of general just because I think that it makes the most sense with this example, but there was a vote that I didn't agree with, and the vote was 4-1, and I was the only person that voted against it. And I felt very, very strongly in my opinion. And it was at that point when I realized that in order for us to be successful, I needed to really understand why I was the only one that voted a different way, and then ask the questions I needed to ask, and then leave that where it was, and then be united, because that's what was best for the district, right? Because what's going to happen is once decisions are made, once that vote happens, and whatever policy moves forward or whatever decision is made, the community is going to ask you questions about it. They're going to ask you, and if you are divided or if you're one person that's speaking differently from the group, then it really comes across as unorganized and not effective leadership. So it's really important to understand why decisions are made. Whether you agree with them or not, it's important to understand why it was made, because you might have to explain it to someone else. So that's how I approach it, understanding why the decision was made, accepting that I'm on a board with other individuals who are also knowledgeable, and they brought all their life experiences to that decision, and then moving forward.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us?
I think the last thing that I'll say is I thought that it was, I was kind of like going back and forth, trying to, I thought that since you've been asking questions all night, I thought I would ask one. Is there anybody in this room, and you can raise your hand if you're brave enough, but is there anybody in this room that doesn't believe that every single student in this district can succeed if given the proper tools? Not one person raised their hand. So regardless of the decision that you made, we are all united. We're all here for the same reason. And I feel good about that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have you step back out into the hall. Is Parvin Seaver here? No Parvin. Okay. So we will take Parvin out of the lineup, out of the appointments, and we can invite everyone else back in. Thank you.
We get our phones back now, right?
You can have your phones back. This is the new California school norm. We're just practicing with adults, okay? This is what Newsom's discussing right now. Well, I keep turning mine off, and it keeps. Do we have everybody? Well, we have most of our applicants back in. Okay, great. So what we're going to do right now is each board member is going to share their ranking of the applicants. And if we need a couple minutes to think over that, I know, it feels overwhelming, and it's really hard to be like, yes, we're going to do this totally in public, but that is the way it's going to go. We want all of you to understand how we go about it. Okay. Hold on, sorry, I'm opening the tally sheet. Because we're gonna put this into the agenda packet as well. So this will be public records. And okay. If you'd like, we can either do it. We can do it one of two ways. We can each give our top three, or we can do a complete. So if we do the top three, I think we'll end up doing it. It'll be kind of like ranked choice. I think it should be fine.
Question, would it, I guess, I don't know if we need to, but would it be more appropriate to recess for like 5-10 minutes so we can really figure out our decision? Because I feel like between the interviews and the paper, like the applications, I feel like I would need additional time to just really work through them.
We can recess, but we cannot have any conversation.
No conversation, just so we can work on our own.
I think, would you be comfortable if we just like sat and had like 2 quiet minutes? Or if you want to step out, that would be fine. Do you feel like you need 5 or 10, or how many do you need?
At least 5 to really. Okay. I just want to be like, I mean, we've got a lot of really great candidates, so it's really hard to rank and, or like, I'm genuinely
Let's take
struggling.
5 minutes, and we're just gonna
Okay.
have 5 minutes. Go for it. feeling like we're pretty close here? Yeah? Maybe?
I had a quick procedural question, which I'm asking with the mic on, which is, you said about top three. Do we want to go first choice each, second choice each, third choice each? That way, rather than having somebody, I think that might be a better,
I think that would be
less
nice.
influencing way of doing it, perhaps,
Yeah.
right?
So we'll each share our first choice, and then we'll each share our second choice, and then we'll each share a third choice. Do we feel comfortable with that? Do you want to just blurt them out? Ready, set. We're all leaving. We open up all the seats. You all have a new seat. Go ahead. No? Bye.
Sorry, are we having a discussion about the reasons why, or are we just gonna, we can just give a name and do it that way?
So it's up to us right now. I think there's been some conversation about just sort of giving it and stating it, but if anyone feels like I really need to give some reason behind this, then I think that's really valid as well. So we can kind of just take it authentically and see how it transpires if you're comfortable with that, or we can set some stricter parameters right now.
I'm okay with that. I don't know.
Taking it authentically?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And just one choice at a time.
Let's just do
Yeah,
our
I
first
think so.
choices first, and we'll just start there. So
I'm happy to go first.
I'm sorry.
No, it's hard.
I mean, it's really, this is challenging, and we're like telling people who spend a lot of time on this. And Student Trustee Shepherd, you are more than welcome to add in your choices as well. So you can jump in if you have a feeling as well. You have an advisory vote in this. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Who's your first?
Okay, my first choice, and also can I just say quickly, thank you all for coming. I have based my decision and my ranking on not only the interview questions that you just gave, and thank you for the really thoughtful responses, but also on your application online too. And my choice would be Joshua Mahoney.
Do you feel comfortable going next, Trustee Boyd? Okay.
I want to second the thanks for everyone who's here tonight. My first choice would be Joshua Mahoney.
I don't. I have a tie.
Okay.
But honestly, I would be comfortable with Joshua Mahoney as well. I have two ties, and
I can
we're
put
leaning
two in,
towards-
so I can put two in your,
I think for the sake of everybody being on the same, like, if everybody's only giving one, I don't, yeah.
we can, I mean, my first choice is actually different. My first choice is Jolene Gasman, and the reason that that is my first choice is, one, so I am giving a little bit heavier ranking to anyone who went through the process of formally applying to be a full school board member and is willing to consider the commitment of a 4-year term, just because I know from being up here what that takes. But also, there was one really critical thing that Jolene put in her application, and it's something we've struggled with a lot, and this really just put it a level above for me, and it was in the last question, 11. What do you see as the areas most needing improvement in AUSD? I think one of the areas that needs improvement is outreach. There are a lot of families here that would love to get involved but possibly don't know how or don't see a place that feels like it works for them. As room parent, I was able to learn that outreach and communication, rather than generic messages, helped to get more people involved. If we could create outreach more or reach out more, we could create even stronger community bonds, active participation in our schools, and create more incentive to help our schools whenever needed. And for me, that's something we've had multiple lengthy discussions about, and I feel like that's a person who's done it on the front lines and has shared that they've had success, and I think that could be a real asset to us on the board. So that's why that's my first choice.
That was basically my tiebreaker, was actually Joshua Mahoney and Jolene Gasman. and it's really, both applications are great, both interviews were great. I think that's why, I can't, it's hard to pick one or the other, and for me, I feel like it would be helpful if we could also hear from district staff, like our executive board and or superintendent and student trustees. We can't.
We can hear from our student trustee,
Okay.
and you can give reasons and have the conversation, but it does need to stay just as the.
Okay. Wasn't sure.
There's like a ton of questions I want to ask, more of our,
I know,
our
that's why it's
applicants, but I'm like,
difficult. Yeah.
I know. Do you have any input? Yeah.
My first choice was also Jolene Yasmin. I think you, I don't know how to say it, okay. Having, I feel you bring another perspective to the board, specifically with your daughter. I feel like a lot of the times people talk about special ed, but don't have firsthand experience, so they don't fully know what they're talking about. And I think you being up here would shine a lot of light about what it truly means and what that program truly needs.
Okay. Do you want to make a first choice, or? I think that can
Why does it have to rest on me?
Because you're the deciding, right now, because we can all give our second ones and come back to you if you want, I guess. We don't have a motion, we don't have a vote yet, so.
My top,
I want to give you some more time to think and process. I don't want to rush this for anybody. So if anyone's comfortable giving their second choice. I know I'm the same. So we got to just do it. Okay.
My second choice is Jolene Gasman.
Okay.
My second choice was Jared Brandt.
My second choice was Jared Brandt as well. Student trustee Shepherd, would you like to share?
Yeah, my second choice was Joshua Mahoney.
either way, it's tied. Well, I guess, because so are we counting the advisory vote in the final vote? Because otherwise it's still a tie,
We're gonna work it. We're gonna work it to a good place. We're just getting this information out. It's a whole process. So, whenever you're ready. My third choice was Joshua Mahoney. So I'll just go ahead and put that in the third choice, so that I've filled out my top three.
Do you want us to share third choices?
Why not? We said we were gonna do it that way. Let's do that.
My third choice is Brian Doss.
My third choice is Brian Doss also.
Same.
Me too.
So it looks like right now we have a split on the first until you make up your decision. If we go,
I guess my question is.
hold on, yeah, go ahead.
Well, so Jolene, no, I'm mixing up names.
It's all the J's.
There's too many J names. It's all the J's. No. So
Is this going to spit something out for us?
No, we're just doing we're just telling, so we have it recorded somewhere, and then it'll be added into the agendas and the minutes so that this is public.
And then, yeah, so it's Jolene, Joshua, Brian, Jared for me.
Okay. Cool. Sorry, you just said your first. Jolene?
Jolene, Joshua, Brian,
Okay. Great.
Jared, and then Jason.
Okay, so right now we're in our first choice. We're at a 50-50 split. If we're not counting our advisory vote, which is advisory, but it does give us the advisory that's who that person would lean to. So I think that what we're going to come down to now is deciding between Jolene and Josh Mahoney for this appointment. think what it will be helpful right now is if we kind of each want to give a little bit of information about why we thought that. I'm going to say, since we're in this tiebreaker, if we want to consider bringing each applicant up for like one more question that we decide on, I would say that that's probably appropriate, just because there's two of them. And we're doing a tiebreaker. All right. So, does anybody feel like they would like to ask one final question from our final two candidates? Does anybody have some compelling reason why they would like to help lead the board in one direction or the other?
I can.
Okay.
If that's okay, I'm happy to wait for other people. I just had a really strong feeling from Joshua's application and also from his interview. I just felt real confidence in his ability as a prospective board member to help us through the next few months. I thought that he had a very all-encompassing perspective. Just really understanding the issues. I went through the applications, printed them out, went through with highlighters. And pink was a good thing, right? There's a lot of pink on Joshua Mahoney's, and I don't know any of these applicants personally, so I felt really able to be objective. I really appreciated you have a background in education, but also just the hiring piece, which for us is huge. Words in your application like transparency, guidance, broader direction. I just really felt like Joshua got it. And I'm not demeaning or diminishing anyone else, because I just think you're all incredible people and would all be great on the board. And I'm so glad that some of you are still have filed to run for school board in November. And I feel like, in a way, as the person sitting here who is trusted by the community to make decisions that benefit the students in our district, I'm sort of bearing in mind also what I think people would feel good about. And I also think that everyone here would be great, fingers crossed for the election, but that's my feeling now, as someone who could hit the ground running, and that's what we really need, is someone like right now who can be there and help us as we navigate the next few months. So that's my decision. Thank you. More my advocacy.
I can add mine. So for me, I think the distinguishing points would be actually the fact that based on all of the applications, it felt like Jolene's was the most student-centered. I think at the end of the day, like, every decision we make is student-centered, and for someone that already has that, mindset, and also has spent significant time working on the school sites, in combination with what we heard today, like, that would be the main deciding factor for me, is like someone who's already on the school side, someone who is already speaking to teachers, to parents, to like bringing people in. And I think that a lot of the work that we need to be doing, or we continue to do, is about bringing people in, bringing voices to the table that we don't often reach. So that to me is like somebody's already there and doing it. And that's, yeah.
You're like, she's looking at me, we gotta make a decision. We do have a split here, so we can come up with some different strategies as well for all of this.
I mean, I don't have any good ideas.
No. Well, come on, you always do.
I got nothing. So I don't know if this is a good way to think about it or not, but just being open and a part of what has gone into my thinking on this is the fact that, and I appreciate what you said, President Davidson about giving weight to being willing to step forward for a 4-year term and go through the formal election process. But it also is occurring to me, and in the discussion of Jolene and Joshua, that Jolene is in the running in the formal election process and Joshua is not. So this is the one chance for Joshua to become a member of the board in this current cycle. I don't know whether it's appropriate to weigh that or not, but I'm just being transparent in how I'm thinking about it. I also, among the things that I appreciate, including a student-focused view and passion and motivation, and we are here for the students, I appreciate a certain holding all the balls in the air at once, level, sort of calm voice in the room. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that I think of myself as that person sometimes, and I appreciate that quality in Joshua, and I would see him adding a helpful sort of balancing energy to the board. I see it adding a helpful energy.
I found a solution. Doesn't put any of us on the spot. Please don't take this the wrong way. I took the advisory votes out of the count, and I just counted up how many votes each person had across all of ours. And so just first and second rankings, if we wanted to go by that. And Joshua Mahoney has 4 across the board. Jolene has 3 across the board. Brian Doss has 3 across the board, and Jared Brandt has 2 across the board. So if that helps at all across all of our rankings and choices, Josh has the most votes from all of us. So I think if we wanted to just say we were going to go based on that, we could do that. And I would feel like that was a fair process. If anyone else feels like it's a fair. You're like, yes, it's our choice. I'm trying to come up with a way that's not, because we're in a 2-2 here, and I think we're going to be, because we have lots of fantastic candidates, and I'm so glad that.
Can I also say that we're supposed to be adjourning the meeting 3 minutes ago? Do we want to make a motion just to extend by a few minutes to allow us to finish up?
Yeah, do you want to do it in 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'm just going to move to extend the meeting by 10 minutes.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. 10 minutes more. That's all we get. Okay, so if we can choose to go that route, we can choose to debate and deliberate further. Someone can make a motion.
I wonder if asking an additional question would help.
You want to do that real quick additional question for each candidate?
Question, are you guys taking public comment?
No, we did our public comment on this agenda item previously.
So we can.
We're not going to take any further public comment. We did it at the beginning of the agenda item. Question.
I guess my other question is, what does the ranking look like with the advisory vote? Because
It's
Is it-
unhelpful.
Oh.
It's a tie.
Oh, okay.
So, because we don't actually count advisory votes.
No, I know.
In normal situations, so I feel like we have to be consistent in that sense.
No, I wasn't trying to, I just wanted to see if it made any,
Well, actually, sorry, hold on. Let me recount. Okay. Stop moving. Okay, so we would still be in the same situation with the advisory vote, where Josh has 5 and Jolene has 4. So it just goes up 1 and up 1, and Brian Doss has 4, and Jared Brandt would stay with the 2. Yeah, so if anyone wants to make a motion, or if you have a question that you feel like would help answer the question. I'm going to make a motion that we appoint Joshua Mahoney as our trustee to fill the vacant seat for this evening, and hope that the community watches Jolene and votes for her in the upcoming election. Or any of our other solid candidates who are also all here and running.
I'll second that.
So we're going to roll call. Sorry, I was just thinking in my head, I think like not say anything. Okay, we're going to do a roll call on this one. However you want to go is fine.
Down the row. Student trustee Mackenzie Shepherd.
Yeah.
Trustee Kahn.
Yes.
Trustee Boyd.
Yes.
Vice President Hopwood.
Yes.
President Davidson.
Yes. Okay, so welcome to the board. We'll see you for your appointment tomorrow evening at that meeting. Thank you. And we are going to move through our last couple of agenda items this evening. Do we have any superintendent or board member reports?
I actually do. So I just want to welcome everyone back. One of the things I know the board knows, but the community does not know this, but we've been busy getting everyone ready. As the board would know, we've had our executive cabinet retreat as well as our leadership retreat. We covered a lot of materials, had a lot of productive discussions. The cabinet, as well as the leadership team, is going through a book called High Reliability Schools. It's by Marzano and DeFore. And I said this today, during our leadership retreat, we discussed 3 important questions, and it just brings everything back to home. Why do we do this work? And I think that's a question we can always ask ourselves. And what is the impact of our work? And how do we hold ourselves accountable for this work? So I asked my staff to consider these questions this year. And so these questions, are helping us to become more effective and efficient as an organization. And as the board knows, but the community does not know, is that we worked on our roles and responsibilities for each of the positions. And so I feel really happy with that. But the thing that I'm most excited about is developing equity-based budgets for our schools, giving our schools that have more unduplicated students, marginalized students, more money to equalize the budget for each school. So that was something I'm really excited about. One of the things I do want to make sure is that all of you read your principal's letter and find out what needs to be returned to school. There's enrollment paperwork. We send out student information that needs to be verified, so please make sure that you do that, complete all of that data confirmation. Take a look at your child's bell schedule for the first week. I know some of the schools, we have modified schedules. And this morning, we had the kickoff for staff. It was short and sweet. So that's pretty much it. And so I'm glad everyone's back and looking forward to a great next couple of months. And then tomorrow, we'll start our superintendent search. And I'm confident that we'll find somebody, and then they'll be in this position. So, but I'm still thankful that I'm here to keep things going, and hopefully, Dr. Wells, I know he'll be sitting down looking down from above thinking, oh man, this is the first day. And he would have a speech, and so I just want to, and a dance. And so I'm just thankful that I get to sit here and be here for him. So I just want to just say that I'm thinking about him still. Welcome. Thank you.
Nothing. Happy first day of school tomorrow, but yeah, nothing.
I actually have some really quickly, sorry. I had the pleasure of taking my nephew to the TK orientation at Ocean View today. My kids are much older and they don't much care about all that stuff, but my little nephew really loved it. And I really appreciate all of the teachers who took time out today to be at welcome back events and in the midst of getting their classrooms ready. That is added work, but so beneficial to the kids. And it was really just nice to see them start connecting and being out there. I do have to point out a couple of things. I watched and experienced the teacher assignments. We need a new system for this. It is an absolute headache for parents. People are like climbing through Aries on their phone, like, wait, which tab is it under? Is it there? Is it here? I think it would be really nice if we like set a precedent that maybe at 12 o'clock on the day before school or 3 o'clock, the classroom teacher emailed their class and said, welcome to my class. Here's the class list. Here we go. And we just like took it and set it. At my old school, they used to post it on the door of the school, and you could walk up and all the kids were there and everyone was excited. So I just think that we could have some different ways of letting families know that and making it a nicer process. And then I got one other piece of feedback. We made a commitment to our families about aftercare. And I heard, it was really hard to hear this because it's a teacher in our district and her schedule just doesn't quite line up with her daughter's schedule, and they aren't guaranteed care. They're 20th on our ACC waiting list, and that's really, really challenging. So I'd love us to really look into whether that's a space constraint, is that staffing, like what are our reasons for still not being at a level of being able to provide that to our community. It was through ACC. Yeah. And I really think that for our youngest learners, our TK and our K kids, because their schedule is still shortened, that it's really important to have that. And the final thing I'm going to bring up is ahead of tomorrow, we've moved to this unified schedule. We are asking parents to drop kids off at 2 different sites at the exact same time in Albany. And so I really just want us to monitor how this first week goes and be reflective and think about, do we need some little minor tweaks and adjustments, or what else can we do as a district to make this a more reasonable situation for our families? I'm sorry that my board report is all those suggestions, but it's the beginning of school. You want to?
Just a quick comment. I think regarding teacher assignments, I don't think it's fair for us to put additional work on teachers. I think that's the district's responsibility to make sure parents are informed. So I think that's something that we as a district need to look at. How can we do a better job of informing parents? I know even last year we talked about providing that information sooner rather than later, because sometimes there are plenty of things that parents may need to reach out to teachers about in advance, and only having less than like half a day for that is really difficult. Like, I mean, I've got a medical appointment that I need to pull my kid out at a very odd hour that, that's the only thing that works. And so I need to be able to like communicate with the teacher in advance so that we're not causing so much disruptions in the first week and the second week. So there's certain things that I think we need to like work on a little bit more, just so that we can start on a stronger foot instead of being very chaotic and last minute.
If I can just throw in a comment on this one too, because I'm at the glorious age now where my kids are old enough that they just retrieve their own schedule and inform me of what's happening, so I no longer need to try to navigate Aries. But I remember when I was trying to do it, a part of the difficulty for me was I literally couldn't figure out what tab I was supposed to hit to see the teacher's name. And I was in demographics, I was in all sorts of stuff, and so I'm wondering if it's like, not like it could be there if it were just there in a clearer way. Like the student data confirmation stuff worked very easily for me this year, at least. It was very like, boom, boom, boom. I understood it. I was done with it in 5 minutes. Like, I wonder if it could be like the final tab of that or something like, and your teacher is, just so that it doesn't have to be extra work for teachers, but maybe just a way that we still use that same system, but it's just a little bit more like foolproof. I'm the fool in this.
Or we just give the steps. We could just like publish the steps and be like, here's how you find it. If that's the best. Okay. This is my board report. They're making their board reports. Anyways, we have a great idea. Let's fix that. Future agenda items, I think one is that we want to look at how we fix our teacher assignment communication to the community. Any other future agenda items? Nope. All right, we are adjourning this meeting.